There is a Solution for That is sponsored by VARC Solutions. VARC Solutions helps small businesses succeed by delivering expert QuickBooks bookkeeping, consulting, quick-based development, and integrated solutions. If you own a small to medium-sized business that uses QuickBooks or QuickBase, the experts at VARC Solutions can help. In business since 1999, with people who care and the knowledge and experience to solve your toughest problems. Visit VARCsolutions.com for all your QuickBooks needs. Welcome back to another edition of There's a Solution for That, where we help small businesses succeed by discussing challenging business problems and best-in-class solutions. Welcome back to another episode of There's a Solution for That. We've got an interesting topic today, one that is unfortunate. It's something that happens in every business at some point during your growth, and that is... Okay, stop. Let's try this over again. From the beginning. Welcome back to There's a Solution for That. And we've got a great topic for you today, a topic that, quite frankly, is a little unfortunate that we actually have to talk about, and that is how to handle customer complaints. No matter whether you're a small business, a medium-sized business, or a large business, you're going to have customers that at some point are not going to be happy. Doesn't matter if you're the best business in the world, doing everything flawlessly. It is impossible to make everybody happy all the time. So this is a topic that at some point you're going to have to deal with, and quite frankly, hopefully get better and better at over time. And I'm not just talking about you, I'm talking about your team, the folks that are engaging with your customers directly. That could be salespeople, customer service, project managers, billing, accounts payable, all those folks that are dealing with your customers. They're interacting with them, and every single time that there's an interaction, there's an opportunity to get it wrong or to get it right. And so we're going to talk during this topic about how to solve the problem of customer complaints. Okay, what I'm going to give you, quite frankly, is my roadmap, if you will, some of the tips and guidelines that I give my team to address customer complaints. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. But again, the goal is no matter how you handle customer complaints, the goal obviously is to help make sure that your customers are happy at the end of the day. But I think the bigger goal is to continue to improve. Okay, just get better and better at this because this is not the first time, it's not the last time that you're going to have an unhappy customer. So how do you handle that? How do you grow through that? How do you develop a team that is appropriately responding to those complaints in a way that you would be happy about as an owner or a business leader? So with no further ado, I'm going to give you kind of like my checklist or my guidelines that I use. So customer complaint comes in, it could be via phone, could be via email, could be on a Google review, could be a Yelp review, doesn't matter. Okay, a customer complaint comes in. The first and probably the most important step is to breathe. Literally just breathe. Take a time to breathe and just relax. I think the most common emotion that a business owner or a leader or customer service rep is going to experience is going to be a lot of defensiveness. Maybe your team's going to be upset, just as upset as the customer is. Like, I can't believe this customer complained. So tone down the emotion, or at least give yourself some time for those immediate reactions and those immediate emotions to calm down a little bit before you just go off and reply. So first and foremost, breathe. Take time to just let your nerves calm down, let your emotions rest a little bit before you go on to the next step. Okay? The second step, in my opinion, is to reread the customer's complaint. Okay, what are they really, really, really upset about? Okay, because it could be that you promised something and you didn't deliver. Okay, it could be they were expecting a response and you didn't give them a response. It could be that they got a bill and they weren't happy with the amount that they were charged, and there may have been a disconnect during the process of communicating what the charges would be, or when they're going to get charged, or how much they're going to get charged. So there could be a billing issue. It could be, just like when you're, if you recall back to days when you were in school, sometimes there's just personality conflicts, right? It could be, hey, this customer and whoever was working on that account, they just don't get along. Okay, those are realities of business as well, because we're talking about people here. People are not perfect. People make mistakes. And so there's always those opportunities. So the question is, what is the customer really, really unhappy about? And I think, honestly, the hard part is, especially if you've got a customer complaint and it's via email and it's long, right? There's lots and lots of things that are getting addressed. There's a rebuilding of timelines, and you did this, and then this happened, and this happened, and this happened. I think the overarching concept that I want to get across in this stage is to try to figure out what is truly the main issue. And if the customer is asking for a specific response or a specific remedy, I think you need to be looking for that and see, obviously, as much as possible, can you give that to that customer? Okay, but again, there may be a lot of different things that are getting outlined. Try to identify what is the main real issue. And if you're not sure, you can certainly ask for clarification. So that's the second thing. I think the third thing is, there's always two sides to a story. Okay, so you've got a customer that is saying these things went wrong and I'm unhappy, but there's also another side of the story, and that is what your team is thinking about that same interaction or that same project. So it's important to do your own due diligence. Talk to your team. Ask them for their version of the story. What happened? Is there any part of the customer story that is true? Okay, that is completely true, right? That we can agree on that we messed up. Okay, there may be other elements of the story from your own team where you might have a disagreement. You may be like, that's not what happened. This is what happened, and I understand that they're unhappy about this other thing, but this is what really happened. So I think it's good to get both sides of the story, especially if you're in a leadership position where you're having to decide ultimately, did we mess up? Did we not mess up? And what are we going to do about it? So obviously talk to your team and get their story, which is going to lead into the next step. But what I really want to say at this point is, if during your discovery and your conversations with your team, it comes to light that, quite frankly, you messed up. Okay, there's something that you didn't do or your team didn't do. The project wasn't completed successfully. There was some mistake that was overlooked. What is it about the customer's complaint that you can own and admit to and acknowledge and obviously then start to figure out what can be done in response to remedy the situation and make the customer happy? Okay. So in the conversations with your team, you shouldn't just be looking at, hey, how can we defend ourselves? Hey, why are we right and the customer is wrong? I think you should be looking for opportunities to say, what did we do wrong? Okay, is there any part of this that we need to admit to, so that you can respond objectively, not emotionally, but objectively to that customer. Okay, the next step, be fair and reasoned in your response. Okay, so number one, acknowledge the customer's frustration. Again, there could be two different sides of the story, but your customer's side is equally valid from their perspective, right? That's what they believe happened. That's their truth. They are, they are justified in feeling the way that they are feeling. So I think it's important to simply acknowledge that they're upset. You're acknowledging that something did go wrong. Because if you don't acknowledge it, you're being dismissive, and trust me, in responses to customers, that never goes well. Okay, you do need to acknowledge what happened from their perspective. The second thing would be to admit, okay, and acknowledge what might have been done on your end as a service provider that could have been done better. Okay, so here's the thing. Just like, if you're having a disagreement with your spouse and they harmed you in some way, or they said something wrong that really hurt your feelings, having admitting what you did, apologizing for it, legitimately apologizing for it, goes a long way to remedying the situation. It's not good enough to say, I'm sorry that your feelings are hurt, okay? I'm sorry that you didn't like what I said. In other words, you can't put it on the customer to say, boy, you're really upset about this, and I'm sorry you feel this way. No, you have to say, look, I talked with my team. I understand the situation. I understand that this is the part that went wrong in this engagement. Here's what we did that we shouldn't have done. Here's what we did that we kind of messed up on, and I apologize. Okay, you need to actually say, I apologize for this. Okay, goes a long way. Goes a long way. The next thing is to list out any steps that you are going to take to remedy the situation. Okay, so hey, customer, thank you so much for sending your complaint or your feedback. Here's the things that I talked with my team that we did wrong that I apologize for, and then obviously give them a list of what you think could be done in response to remedy the situation. Okay. Now, if the customer in their complaint listed specific things that they're asking for, obviously you need to consider those things and try to accommodate that customer as much as possible. But I also want to give you one other piece of context here. So before you go off and give them a list of here's the stuff that we're going to do in response, I think it's also equally important to educate the customer on any elements they might not have the complete picture on. Okay, so let me try to explain that a little bit, at least from my perspective. The customer is complaining. This is their perspective. This is something that went wrong or they didn't agree with. They may not have the whole story. I can tell you from our company's perspective, we really, really try to take care of our customers. We really try to do a good job on every single client engagement. Most of the times we get it right. Sometimes we don't. So we have to acknowledge what we didn't do. But a lot of times, from my experience at least, the person that's complaining is not always the person that was in the room. Okay, they're not always the person that was engaging, communicating throughout this project. A lot of times it's an owner that was maybe one or two steps removed from the actual project. It might be the person in finance that's finally getting the bill and saying, "Hey, we never approved this dollar amount," but they again weren't necessarily in the project throughout the time. They weren't on the conversations where somebody said, yes, I approve that. Oh yeah, that budget's totally fine. A lot of times it's somebody coming in after the fact with a complaint that, again, doesn't have the whole story. So I think, again, and I apologize, I kind of got these out of order a little bit, but before you respond with what you're going to do, I think it is important to clarify from your perspective any details that are super important to give the complete story. Now, this is a touchy, potentially very touchy thing. This really does take some nuance. It does take some emotional quotient, so to speak, in terms of relationships and people skills, because you don't want to be defensive, right? You don't want to say, hey, thanks for your complaint. I completely disagree with you. You're wrong. Or you're full of it and we're not going to do anything. I think you have to acknowledge what you did do that may be correctable. But I think it really is important as a business to stand up for your company and your employees when you need to, right? When you need to come back and say, I understand this is what you experienced, but here's the other side of it that you may not be seeing. Okay, again, not in a defensive tone, not in a this is not our fault, we're not taking any responsibility, but hey, here's the other side that you may not be aware of. We had this conversation with Sally and Betty and John, and this is where they approved that budget. This is where they approved that amount. This is where they said that's totally fine. And I understand that now you're 3 weeks, a month later, seeing this bill and you're questioning it and not happy about it. But here's the history that you weren't aware of that maybe your team isn't sharing with you, or you just weren't party to those conversations. So again, I think it's important to at least share your side of it when it can be done so in a non-defensive tone, really just more clarifying the other side of the story so there's full transparency across the board. All right, now let's get back to that last part that I was trying to get to, which was, list out the stuff that you're going to do. So I think this is important to be able to say, you complained, you're upset about these things, we apologize. Here are a few of the things that we think would resolve this situation. Whether it's we are going to give a certain amount of money back, we're going to give you credit on a future bill, or we're going to go fix the mistake at our cost. Whatever those things are. Okay, I think you need to acknowledge those things and say, this is what we think, okay, this is the important part. This is what we think we could do that would help resolve the situation. And then last but not least, give the power back to the customer. As a consumer, I want to feel, I may not be in control, but I want to feel like I'm empowered. I want to feel like I'm in control, especially of my pocketbook and where I spend my money and who I spend my money with. So I think it's important to give control back to that customer to say, if we were to do this, this, and this, okay, that's on your list of things that you can do, would that resolve this issue to your satisfaction? Okay, give them the power to say, yes, that would take care of this, or no, it wouldn't. Okay, so obviously, if you give them the list and they come back and say, yes, that would actually be very, very acceptable, great. You can go do those things, hopefully win that customer back to being a loyal customer, a great customer, and maybe hopefully a customer for life because of how well you handled that complaint. But quite frankly, if you give them the power, you say, these are the things that we would like to do in response to, we think would remedy the situation, and they come back and say, no, that's not going to be good enough. Now I think it's probably, regardless of what happens next, probably a good time to get on the phone and talk through it. Okay. Now, so let's talk about that last point that I just made. Let's get on the phone and talk about it. Now, some people would say, as soon as you get the customer complaint, get on the phone and talk about it. Okay, and that's totally fine. I prefer not to immediately get on the phone with the customer because I really do want to talk to my team. I really do want to kind of get the backstory that may not be transparently in the customer's complaint. So I don't immediately get on the phone and pick up a phone and call somebody. Some of you that may be your first thing to do. And by the way, if you do, that's great. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying that's typically not what I like to do. But it is a very, very appropriate thing to do at some point. Now, if you've outlined the steps and they've come back and said, that's not going to be acceptable to me, that's when I think, at a minimum, that's when you need to get on the phone and talk it out before it gets into a back and forth, okay? Which, by the way, leads into my last point, which is if you've presented some solutions to the problem, and maybe now there is a beginning of a back and forth argument about the details. There's a disagreement on what happened. There's not agreement or alignment on the resolution. If you're starting to go down that road, definitely let's schedule some time. Let's pick up the phone and let's talk. Let's schedule a time to talk through this because, a lot of things can be interpreted in an email. A lot of things can be misinterpreted in an email. And so getting on the phone and talking through it is never a bad idea, as long as you've at least got the facts behind you that you know what happened from your perspective. But oftentimes getting on the phone is a best case scenario because it does give the opportunity to listen to your customer, hear them out, and then respond with what you can do. Okay, so that's my very short, very basic outline guidelines that I give my team on how to respond to customer complaints. And generally speaking, I have found that 9 times out of 10, we've made our customer happy, or at least a little bit happier than they were before, and I hope it works for you. So thanks again for joining us on There's a Solution for That podcast. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next week. There is a Solution for That is produced by VARC Solutions. This episode was produced by Ashley White and Aaron Riley. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Watch the video version on youtube.com/theresaSolutionforThat. Or visit VARCsolutions.com/podcast, where you'll find our entire podcast archive, as well as show notes, links to solution providers, and complete transcripts of every episode. If you love the podcast, please leave a review with your comments.